So what I want to do is really look at what are some of the outcomes when project management is not what you would hope it would be. And rather than talk about the things that everybody on this call is already familiar with, which are things like the cost of not pursuing additional compensation when you've done work outside your scope, or the cost of not doing the best quality control on your documents so you have to do them over again. Those are the kinds of things we see every day, think about every day in our practices. But what I've picked out are three things that we don't maybe see a lot of, or you don't see sort of dollars associated with them, aside from claims possibly. When those happen, we certainly know about it. But I want to talk about sort of the impact in our industry on these things and what we can do inside of our organization to alleviate not these specific, but the kind of behaviors that lead to these kinds of outcomes. And of course, all of these have what can be an incredible impact on the profit of an organization. So looking first at claims, just talking for a minute about what are some of the contributing factors to claims. When you talk to attorneys, to risk management organizations, to the insurance industry that provides our professional liability insurance, they will tell you that the number one reason given by clients for initiating a claim against a design practice is that they felt the designers didn't meet their expectations. Now, that's a very hard thing to kind of nail down sometimes. It could just be a client's opinion at the end of the day. They thought they would feel different in their building. But oftentimes it's very solid, very concrete things where we just simply missed either understanding what they were asking for or delivering. We might have understood it, but we didn't really do all the things necessary to deliver it. Other reasons, poor guidance to clients. When clients hire us, most clients that hire architects and engineers are clients that maybe only do this once in their life. You know, what they do for a living is build train cars or sell sheep or manage rugby teams or whatever it is they do. But what they don't do every day is deal with architects. So when they do, every now and then say, oh, you know what, I need to build a new factory to build wheels for my trains, then they say, I've got to engage the design profession in order to make that happen. Well, one of the things they're looking for, in addition to good design, is they're looking for guidance through this process. They're looking for help from the professionals as to how to get through this in a successful manner. And then the other two are fairly obvious. Poor communications, if we're not listening to them, if we're not giving them the feedback they need, and then poor quality deliverables. So those are just some examples of the contributing factors to why claims happen on projects. But to look now at what the potential impact is, in our industry, the average cost of claims in the design profession is somewhere between 2 to 4% of annual revenue. So if you're a company that's making $100 million a year, on average in our industry, you're paying $2 to $4 million of that out in claims. And it's not just the money you're actually writing a check to a client. It's the money for the attorneys. It's the money associated with lost productivity because you've got people who now have to deal with the claim instead of working on future designs. It's all of those things that go towards the cost of just dealing with a claim. So $2 to $4 million, that's a lot of money. If you're a company that, and I'll set the target low just because the math is easy, if you're a company that's a 10% profit target in a year, well, imagine if a $100 million company, if your profit target is $10 million, if you're just throwing $4 million of it away to claims, that's almost half of your profit going towards claims. But other things that affect that, again, are things you don't see on the bottom line, things you don't see maybe in an Excel spreadsheet, but are things like availability of staff. I alluded to that a minute ago. So if you've got a claim that comes up, you now have to take the people that were associated with that project, and they are now sitting in some back room digging through letters and emails from 3 years ago and sitting in rooms with lawyers. What they're not doing is being productive on future work, on new work. So there's a whole staff availability issue. There's your reputation in the industry, which can be incredibly costly from a dollar standpoint. So if the claim is the kind of claim that goes public, and even if it's not, we're actually not that big of a community, the architecture, design, and construction world. So if you're doing a project and it's in the middle of a big claim, word will get out, other clients will hear about it. And then there's morale. So morale is just simply people that, again, talking about the guy earlier, I said is sitting in a back room reading 3-year-old emails trying to figure out what went wrong to defend this claim. Well, that's not what that person wants to do. What that person wants to do is design a new building or design a new park or whatever it is they do. And we tend to lose people as a result of that. So these are some examples of the cost, both in dollars and a little less concrete, but that have a dollar effect in staff availability, reputation, and morale. Client retention, which has some of the same contributing factors, but it's all about this notion of those clients that either are clients that do come back and do multiple projects in this profession, or they may not do another project. They're that person that, is the sheep farmer or the guy who builds trains, but they can be a great resource for us in the way of giving a reference to somebody else. So if you've lost the confidence of that client, you're not going to win that client for the next job or have that client for a reference. And some of the contributing factors there, you can see missed expectations is there again, poor communications, poor leadership. It's kind of back to that guidance thing. These clients need to make decisions every day as participating members of the design process. And if we don't give them the information they need, give them the leadership they need, and educate them along the way, they're going to make bad decisions. And those bad decisions will be reflected in their project. So what are some of the costs, that potential impact associated with that? Well, there are studies out there that say, on average, the cost to win a project with a new client, someone you haven't worked for, is 6 times more than the cost to win that same project with an existing client. So making numbers up again, if it was costing you $10,000 to go after a project with an existing client, well, if that client was no longer in good standing with you, or you're not in good standing with them, you've got to now win work somewhere else because that client's not going to give you work. You're going to spend 6 times more money to win those projects. If you had 10 of those in 1 year, the cost difference between the 10,000 and 60 is 50,000. 10 of those is $500,000. So that by itself, you could say, well, there's an impact of $500,000 to my bottom line. Now, again, these are made-up numbers. It might cost you $50,000 to win an existing client and $300,000 to win an old one, or it might be $5,000 versus $30,000. But the idea is just, you can apply your own math to your organization. But when you look at it, you're seeing in this particular example, there's a $500,000 potential impact if you had 10 of these. If you wanted to still hit that $100 million target at the end of the year and still wanted to hit your profit targets, well, you'd have to win additional revenue to offset that $500,000 loss. And again, because I'm not a mathematician, I'm an architect, I'm going to do easy math here. If your profit target was 10%, in order to offset that $500,000 loss, you'd have to win an additional $5 million of fees. So now your $100 million target becomes $105 million. And if you don't win that, then you're out the $500,000 profit. Employee retention, this is one, as I've gone down the line, they become a little less and less obvious, sort of in the realm of the things we look at as an industry or inside our own organization. So employee retention is just the whole idea of people that leave your company to go work somewhere else. And through studies done on exit interviews where they've gone to companies and say, can you give us kind of the transcripts of discussions you've had with people when they've left? The top things that come up are things like, my responsibilities within the organization were very unclear. I would come to work every day, but I really wasn't sure what my job was. I never got a real job description. I never got training in the things that I thought I was expected to do. Another thing is lack of authority or empowerment. And really a twist on that, which I've seen to be even worse, is they're given a very clear sense of authority and empowerment, but then they're overridden over and over again. So they go and they make a decision, and they do something with a client, or they hire a certain person, and then have someone above them come in and turn that decision around. So these kinds of things are just examples of within an organization, people will leave your company if these are the kinds of things they have to deal with. So the bad working environment, that I'm not talking about the color of the walls or the furniture, even though I'm sure that could have an impact. It's more about, do people feel trusted within the workplace? Do they feel they're being given the information they need to do their job? It's that kind of work environment that we're talking about. And poor leadership, you're going to hear me reference leadership over and over and over again. And that could be leadership, as we said earlier, is the leadership and guidance you provide a client, or the leadership in this case of an organization providing service to their employees, training to their employees, guidance, all those things that make someone a good leader. So the potential impact of an organization, the average turnover in a company is 14%. So if you had 100 people in your company, on an annual basis, you would expect about 14 people would leave and you bring new people in. It's kind of that rotation. Well, 7% is what they consider healthy, and by healthy it's just maybe that 7% is something that you as an organization really can't impact. It's things like someone going on maternity leave, or someone, their spouse gets a job in Sydney, so they're working in Perth, they have to move to Sydney, so they leave your company. It could be they're looking for a new line of experience. Maybe your business is healthcare, doing hospitals and clinics and things. What they really want to do is stadiums, so they get an opportunity somewhere to go work on a stadium, so they leave. Well, you're not going to suddenly open a stadium branch with your company just to keep somebody. So those are the kinds of things that the industry says that's healthy, normal turnover. But it's that other 7% that isn't healthy. It's those people that are leaving for some of the reasons we just talked about, and I'm sure you know plenty of reasons, other reasons that I didn't list, when people leave your company. And we're talking about those people that you wish wouldn't leave. So the cost to a company for that, the average cost to a company to hire somebody is about $100,000. And that, again, it depends on who you're hiring. This is sort of looking at that average person within an organization. If you're hiring a new director for your company, obviously it might cost you more than, and the $100,000, we're not talking about the salary. We're just talking about the costs of using headhunters to help you go find employees, the cost of training those employees, the cost of lost productivity while those employees are getting up to speed. All of those are things that contribute to this cost of hiring somebody. Maybe it's the cost, you found the perfect employee, they're living in Sydney, but you want them in Perth, so there's costs associated with flying them to come do interviews or moving them. So there are all these things that can contribute, but it's a real number, and whether the number is 100,000 or 80,000 or 120,000, depending on the person, on average it's around 100,000. So if you were that company that was having that average 7% of unhealthy turnover, then you're potentially spending $700,000 a year replacing people that you wished you weren't replacing. And similar to what we showed a minute ago, at that 10% target of profit, you would have to earn an additional $7 million of revenue to offset that cost of turning those people over. So if you had these claims, say in the range of $2 to $4 million, if you had the cost of client retention problems at potentially $5 million, you've got the cost of turnover at $7 million, and these are costs, basically saying additional revenue you'd have to earn. You're sitting there saying, well, now we're basically going out and earning another $15 million just to get us to where we want it to be. So what we want to talk about is, what are some things we can do in an organization to help focus on those project management and or operational things that could avoid these kinds of impacts to our company.